Now the moment we've all been waiting for.
I am Nate Riggle, and you are listening to The Way of the Bonfire. All right, welcome to the podcast where we focus on ways to bring the world together in more meaningful and lasting ways so that the individual, which is you and I, and all the good hardworking people of this world can stop feeling like they have to wait to make the most of their lives and stop actually waiting. And part of that is sharing some wisdom in a series that I call The Lessons from Everywhere. In this podcast, we've got several ongoing series. And in this one, this is where I package up and deliver to you a list of 10 things that I've learned from someone or a group of people or an experience or an industry or an interest or a hobby or an observation or something that maybe is not where we traditionally think to look. Because so many people say, don't take advice from people who don't have what you want. And I guess that contains a thread of common sense that's worth considering, but it's also simplistic. And it misses an incredible opportunity. Like, we're leaving so much on the table. There's so much wisdom hidden all around us. And I say it's simplistic because simple is good, but simplistic is bad. It's simplistic because, let's say I want to be rich. Should I ask a trust fund kid how he or she did it? Maybe, because they might have learned wisdom or wealth creation out of proximity to the ones who created it, or they may just be regurgitating what they have heard without a true understanding of it, or they may be using the evidence of what they have to try to gain credibility and increase their wealth, even though they have no idea what they're talking about. We don't necessarily have a way to 100% know that the people we're asking for advice have exactly what we want. Like, if I want to be a master martial artist, should I trust anyone with a black belt to show me the way? And should I not try to learn from people who don't have what I want, even if they can say with absolute knowledge and firsthand experience that I should not make the same mistakes they have made? Like, if a guy's just gotten out of prison and says, trust me, it's not worth taking that sort of risk, no matter how big you think the payoff is. He may have nothing that I want, but I'm going to take his advice very seriously into consideration. And even, I think on the last one, it was lessons from my 4-year-old, like little kids that don't have a lot of the things that we want, or maybe that we think we want, have a lot of wisdom, and they still bring surprises every day. So there's so many different places and things where you can learn, even if it's not going to give you the exact thing that you think they have. And these are usually longer episodes. So if you want something shorter, then we have plenty of those. But this one's probably going to be even longer because I could probably do 100 lessons from this topic, which is lessons from everywhere, the game of poker. But I've narrowed it down to, I think, 26. So I better dive in and get after it here. All right. So let me give you one more disclaimer. I'm not a poker champion. I've never won the World Series of poker. But I have learned a ton from the game, and I do win sometimes. And I play not that often, but I've played a lot. So I've learned a lot of what not to do and some things that seem to be working. And I feel like there's just incredible parallels to navigating a lot of stuff that come right out of poker. So I've distilled those down into principles. So number one is you need to have a plan for different stages of each hand and for the stages of the entire game itself. Because in poker, for example, if we're playing Texas Hold'em where you flip 3 cards after everyone's had a chance to either ante, which is when you pay the minimum amount that's required to play your whatever hand you've been dealt. And you can raise or bet a certain amount beyond that if you want. So and it's all just based on your cards and how they play into the other cards that are down, right? You want to get the best hand based off of these different types of suits that have different values. Okay. So you need to have a plan for different stages of each hand, because at first you bet before they flip any cards over. And that might be based off of the cards that are in your hand, what you think your chances are of winning. Then they flip the 3 cards over, and then they flip another one and another one between each kind of set of betting or chances to bet or that sort of thing. So the crazy thing is that how you bet at the beginning and how you, based off of the hand that you have, is going to be potentially way different than how you bet in the middle of that hand and in the middle of everything that transpires and all the observations and things that happen based off of your situation. So if you don't have a plan for how you're going to play at the beginning, how you're going to play in the middle, and how you're going to play at the end, then I really don't think that you're going to find a way you're going to be happy with the outcome, whatever it is. Whether that's you deciding to switch your strategy and fold and not finish the hand, or whether that is you end up winning the whole hand, or you split the pot, or you cut your losses when certain things transpire. If you play every single stage of not just that hand, but the entire game of poker, when all of the factors are changing and they get more complex because more people have more chips and more different things, then if you just keep sticking with the same plan the whole way through and you don't have strategy or principles that you want to stick to or follow, then that's why it gets frustrating. You could feel like you're winning, and then in the middle of the game, you're like, what is happening? And that happens a lot with people. It happens to me, right? I don't necessarily claim to have the perfect plan. But I've seen a lot of people, but I usually know why it's happening. It's because I didn't consciously stick to some principles that I had planned for the middle portion or the ending portion. And by the way, in life, it's the same thing. And I've noticed that, especially here in the middle of life, that the game is just way different. As a father, as a business owner, an entrepreneur trying to grow a family and a business, and as a husband that's trying to make sure that I have a good relationship with my wife and that marriage continues to grow and evolve how it should, and all of the different pressures from all these different angles. It used to be fine if I just worked harder, longer hours, and let myself be the one that had to make the big sacrifice, right? I thought I could do it on my own. I believed in like the Superman syndrome where you're strong enough to handle anything. But it's a different game especially for dads in the middle. And I just want to let you know that if you go to mastersofthemiddle.com, I've created a free PDF. I just am asking for your email. Yeah, you can go and unsubscribe afterwards, but you'll get a free PDF of the 7 secrets of what I've learned from dads in the middle who actually have figured it out and don't feel like they're in this sense of quiet desperation anymore, or that they're in this constant obligation. So whether you know a dad who's in kind of that same Bermuda Triangle of life, or you are one, I think that it really could help you. And I just want to start to provide you some value there. So go download that PDF. It's free. I'll have your email, and yeah, I'll email you some other stuff as things begin to progress. But anyway, I think that that's a great way to look at the middle stage of where some of us are at, having a new set of principles and understanding what does work there. That was a long one. Number 2, you need to base this plan off of, as I said, certain proven tested principles. Not just what everyone says works, but like get down in it and figure out if that black belt actually can hang, right? That figure out if that rich person isn't just a trust fund baby, or that they didn't just have some kind of inheritance or windfall that got them there, or that if you're going to take advice, from somebody who wants to give advice, like understand why they feel like that's really how things work, and decide for yourself. Oh my goodness, this is the most important thing. You have to test things yourself to a certain degree, right? The ones that they say like absolutely do not do this, it will ruin you. I think you should at least understand why they're saying that, and maybe take their advice, like the jail example I gave, but also start testing like you can never know if something's going to work unless you start with a bias toward action. I'm going to go put this to the test, especially if all the outcomes look to be positive, right? And in poker, you know, what that might look like is, if I get pocket aces from the beginning, it might be a good idea to bet instead of just call at before they flip the cards, right? Because that will give me an advantage from the very beginning. And others might have a different proven tested principle. But anyway, start to play the game based on principles that seem to be based on your internal compass, ones that actually work, and stick to those. You need to be, number 3 is you need to be 100% aware of your emotions and what types of things trigger them and why. And I think poker is such a good microcosm of this, because I guess throughout my life, I always kind of was able to get things and thought, oh, I'm the guy with the short fuse. Like, I won't get angry, but when I do, look out, right? Like the Hulk, like you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Like that's your power, right? And I'm going to throw a fit and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this thing. But what happens is, as you get further into life, you can't play like that anymore. If you don't have an awareness of your emotions and know what's going to trigger them and why they're being triggered, then you're just going to be at the mercy of circumstance. And it happens in poker all the time, where it's like if you play based off of your emotions that you just didn't happen to recognize, then you are going to they're going to exploit that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But if I bet because I am thinking in my mind, oh, what would it be like to win? Oh my gosh, I'm going to make this bet. It's going to be so awesome when I beat everybody. I have the best hand. And I'm so focused on my emotions and not what's actually happening on the table and what other people are doing and how they're behaving and what's transpired and what the current state of things are. If I'm not taking inventory of that, then it's going to be a reckless way to play the game. Okay, number 4. And this is maybe a controversial one, but all in is not a concept you should base your strategy on. It's like a Hail Mary. And you need to recognize that it is not a sound way to play most hands, especially if somebody's trying to get you to go all in. This is tough because commitment is really important. You have to be able to commit to something in life and in poker. You have to get after it, right? You got to decide what things you're going to be all in on. And I guess that's what I'm saying is, if you think you can just put it all on red all the time, or if you think you can go all in and that things are going to work out because you went all in regardless of what the thing is, you could end up going all in a way that you didn't even plan or you didn't even hope for, or that it's in doing whatever that you become whatever. There's a famous prankster called Remy Gaillard that's his line. But people want you to go all in. You need to decide if you want to be all in and if that is going to be the right direction. And it does really, really does work if you have the right hand. So don't throw a Hail Mary unless it's going to work. All right, number 5, you need to stick to your plan and be consistent. I think I alluded to this earlier, but if I'm betting and saying, okay, anytime I have a face card, I'm gonna make sure that I bet on every hand, or at least call a certain amount if somebody else bets or raises me, and I'm gonna know what my cutoff is based off of what everyone else on the table is betting, how they're acting, how many chips everyone has, and I know that this is my plan. And even if I get emotional and I get excited, I'm not going to vary from my plan, because that could be some kind of bait, or that I could just be letting letting my emotions drive. Then I'm not going to have a level head, and I'm going to probably lose a ton most of the time by not sticking to my plan. And yeah, plans change, but part of having a plan is knowing how to change your plans. So try to be more consistent in life and in anything that you're working on, and make sure that you're following the principles and the plan that you have, and things will tend to work in your favor. No promises, but there's a high likelihood. All right, number 6 is you can't win without paying. And paying requires some risk and uncertainty. So if you plan to win all of the chips in a certain hand, then but you fold before it's even time to ante up and pay the minimum amount, then you're just not going to win. Like, that's a pretty simple principle. But in life, like, we try to do it all the time. We try to get something for nothing. And we want a guarantee. Like, okay, I'll pay these 2 chips if I can be guaranteed that I will at least get to split the pot with somebody, or I'll be guaranteed to at least win the pot, right? And, or even I'll be guaranteed to at least not lose them. But that's not how things work. You have to pay and know that it's a sunk cost, and that you don't get to know everything. That's part of the game that we play. That's part of what helps us grow and learn and win and advance, and all of that, like, is risk. It's a good thing. And on the flip side of that, number 7, if you win when being reckless, that is not something you should expect to keep happening. And this is one of those mistakes. Take this from the guy that doesn't have everything you want necessarily. I'm not a world champion poker player, but this one I have most certainly learned firsthand. I'll sit down with a bunch of people who seem to kind of have all the odds figured out. They know in their mind, like, okay, this is how many cards are down. This is what I have. So here's the probability of me winning this hand, and here's what I should do. They have just such a great system down. And because I'm reckless, I beat the probability with a hand that based on their system never should have won. And I win a ton of chips, right? Because I was ignorant and I was reckless and I was just feeling stupid and I just wanted to try something crazy. So I win and I think, oh my gosh, like, this is awesome. Like, these guys don't know anything. I'm going to do this every time. Well, guess what? I lost my chips back every single time I've thought that way within the next 1 or 2 hands. Same thing in life. You think that you took this crazy, like, it's good to take a risk. It's good to have a calculated risk, but also kind of embrace the unknown of things. But if you know what you're doing is kind of stupid and you're just going for it and you win, well, that's exhilarating. Congratulations. This is exciting. I wouldn't make a habit of it. I think you need to have those experiences every once in a while because it is fun. And it does teach you something, but don't make it the norm. Or you can go learn for yourself. That's fine too. All right. Number 8, pay attention to everything that is in your field of vision and earshot, but don't jump to conclusions. So in poker, people will sometimes when they first get their cards, if you look around and you're not just like goofing off and looking at your phone or whatever, if you look up when people get their cards, you will see different expressions on their faces. You can get to know exactly how they move every time they get a card, or anytime a new flop happens and the odds have just changed either for or against them. And you may see someone kind of slam their fist down or rub their face in frustration. Or they may even vocally say, "Oh, come on." Right? That is a data point. It is not necessarily safe evidence on what you should do. So, or maybe you see people betting a whole bunch and you think, wow, they must have a good hand. Or they rub their face. They must have a worse hand than they thought. And that's why I say don't jump to conclusions, because they know that you're watching. Even if you're not making it obvious that you're watching them, they know you're watching, and they may be trying to create some sort of illusion or misdirection or get you to do something that benefits them and not you. Okay? So not everything is as it seems in this world and in life and in your situation, even if it seems pretty obvious, it's usually not quite so obvious. You got to pay attention to the nuances and the details and possibilities without making yourself go insane. All right. Number 9, know the odds, but don't let them block you. Probability is not the only factor. All right. You heard this in my story earlier, right? I was being reckless and I still beat the guys that knew the probability perfectly. And they were running around the house like, that shouldn't even be possible. I can't believe you won with a 2-8 offsuit. And we all had face cards and aces. And you only caught that on the river on the very last card. I should have probably let that block me in that situation. But there's other situations where, you see you get this terrible hand, 2-8 offsuit, and you fold because you know that the odds of you actually winning that are really low. And then on the next hand, the person who cautiously made a small bet just to see what happened happens to get a full house on the flop with those low, weird cards. Got to stay in the game. Stay in the game. Don't let probability haunt you so badly, and realize that there's so many other things that come into play. Like 90% of all businesses fail. That might be the probability for the masses, but not necessarily for you. She's out of my league. You don't know. Maybe she's a Star Wars nut and she's attracted to you in some other way, right? Don't let probability be the only factor. Okay, number 10, pride and ego will be exploited. And this is one of the things I love so much about poker, because oftentimes pride and ego are confused with confidence and success and someone you could trust in this world. And in poker, we want you to feel like that. We want you to feel like you're winning. We want you to feel like you can't lose, because if we beat you on one hand, and just barely maybe, or you beat us on one hand by a lot, and it starts to go to your head, and on the next hand, we see that kind of attitude and demeanor, we will come and say, people will try to bait you in. They'll say, maybe, all right, beat this, right? And knowing that you think you have a better hand, but they're sitting there with knowing that they're going to have a royal flush, and they will exploit your pride and ego, either by acting like they don't have a very good hand, or by acting like there's no way you can beat me on this hand, and making you pay more than you should because you have an inflated ego. And that's what's driving. You're not following your plan or any principles. You're following your mind and your ego. It gets them every time. Number 11, understand. And number 11, number 10, probably that happens all the time in real life too. It's just a matter of time. 100% of the time. Pride and ego always gets people. Number 11, understand that bluffing can take on many forms. And if you've ever read like The Art of War, where that's actually it's written by Sun Tzu. It's like this ancient book about strategy that business people use all the time. But with bluffing in poker, it can take on many forms. I alluded to it before, right? Maybe I've got a hand that's really good, and I have decided that I'm just going to keep the most bored looking look on my face, and I'm only going to bet tiny little bits. And everybody around me thinks, oh, he doesn't have much. He's just kind of chasing, hoping to hit on the river or get a good outcome despite the odds, right? That's one way of bluffing. Someone might be acting like they have a great hand and they have absolute garbage, or they may be betting a ton, just trying to push everyone out, because if everyone else bails, then they get paid. And sometimes it may just look like somebody's upset with their hand, right? They're like, oh, I hate this hand, but they have great hands. And that kind of keeps everybody off their back. In The Art of War, I believe it says, when strong, feign weakness. When you are weak, feign strength. And that's absolutely true for business, for poker, for a lot of different things in life. I'm not saying that you should always be bluffing or being dishonest about what's happening with you. I actually recommend the opposite, but understand that other people are absolutely bluffing in a lot of different ways. And keep an eye out for whether or not this might just be a bluff and a play on psychology to get an advantageous position. Number 12, don't feel obligated by fear of losing what you already paid. So I said you always have to pay to play, right? If you want to win, you have to at least ante the minimum amount. And that's how a lot of things are, right? If for me, and this one's also known as know when to fold them. Don't feel obligated by fear of losing what you already paid. Don't feel like you're overcommitted to every single hand and every single thing that you've tried or that's come your way or that's put in front of you or that you've started or that you've spent time on. And I know this sounds completely opposite to a lot of things that I say. Like, commitment is the only way to win if you pick the right things to commit to. Right? James Clear says it's not about It's not about failing. It's about climbing the wrong mountain. It's not about whether or not you can get to the top. It's about climbing the wrong mountain, I think is what he actually said. But certain things, you don't realize that you're on the wrong mountain until you've paid a little bit. And that's just part of the cost of being able to play and having a chance at winning and having a chance at advancing. But too often we think, like in sales, this happens. High-end sales, it happens all the time. You might have a $100,000 deal that you're working on, and you have all this buy-in from this potential client, and you've spent all kinds of emotional energy, and you've bent over backwards trying to make everything fit and work so that you can come together and have this be beneficial for both sides and worth their money and worth their investment. And all the way along, so far, they've been saying, let's keep moving forward. And then your intuition says at some point that this is not like that, something has gone sideways here. Maybe they're looking at a competitor, or maybe they don't actually have the budget that they pretended to have at first. Maybe they're just shopping as part of a formality, right? Because they've already chosen someone, but they have to get contrast. They have to get 4 competing bids. And so they're keeping up their bluff, or they're not telling you everything. But in your mind, you construct this idea that this is going to work no matter what. And the problem is that not every single thing always works all the time. And you being afraid, and the reason that you want to keep going is because you're in denial. You feel like, I can't lose all this time and energy that I put into this. This has to work. And this has to be the right thing, even though in my gut and my heart, everything tells me that it's not right and that it's not going to happen. But I'm lying to myself, and I'm going to make sacrifices that I shouldn't make to try to force this to work. And maybe you do force it and you do make it work. Well, there's so much collateral damage that has now happened along the way in the relationship and all these other different things, because you forced something that you should have just folded on as soon as you felt that way. And it's the same thing in poker. You feel overcommitted to a hand because maybe you bet a whole bunch thinking things were going your way, but then the next card flopped and it didn't look right. And you thought, oh no, there's no way I'm going to beat somebody that like somebody out there has a flush, and I simply can't beat them, even though I had a straight. That's when you fold them. You are not committed to finish this hand, or every single hand. Commit to the ones that you want to commit to, but know that you need to fold on some of them. And that's okay. You haven't lost anything. So that was number 12. I guess this would be number 13. The chips you lose, and this really relates to the last one. See the chips that you lose as research tokens. So if you've paid and put in a lot of work on something and it doesn't go the way that you were hoping, this specific way that you concocted in your mind that things were going to go down, and you thought you checked every box and eliminated all potential risk, but things go sideways, unless it's life or death, like the Challenger space shuttle blowing up, that mistake is not research tokens, right? They paid in the loss of life, and that's very permanent. But in poker and in most other things, what you pay, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's effort, whether it's energy, whether it's commitment, just see that as research tokens, because if you focus on learning and growth and progress, then anything you paid, even if you didn't have the exact outcome you were looking for, you've just learned and you've just done some research. Like in poker, if I pay, like let's say somebody's trying to push everyone out and I have a really good hand, and everybody starts to freak out and start folding, right? Because they don't want to be overcommitted to their hand, especially when the risk seems too high, like they're going to lose it. But someone's bluffing and they're putting in tons of chips to try to win what everyone else has already invested. And I really feel like I can win, but I know that there's a chance that I'll lose, and that's okay. I want to know what cards that person had, so I might still match, knowing that I'll lose 5 chips, this additional 5 chips that they're kind of trying to pull me in, because that 5 chips is worth it to me to know if they were bluffing or what they had that they felt like they could make that big of a bet. Now I've just learned a critical piece of information to tie into all the patterns that I've seen and say, oh, I see. When they have an average hand, they bet a lot. Or this is the 4th time I've seen them bluff. So I didn't lose if I thought about it from a standpoint of research tokens. Now, the next one's going to kind of, if you have some questions in your head, hopefully it resolves some of that. Number 13 is the chips you win are just like an attraction that you had to pay to see within the bigger event. Don't overpay to see any one attraction, right? The goal of poker is to be the chip leader, the person that gets everyone's chips and everyone's bets and everything that they've invested at the end, right? And I know that this podcast is about bringing the world together and winning together and all that, right? So it's not an airtight. I'm kind of going off that script just for a little bit here, because this is more about mindset and navigating a world that doesn't think that way, right? It's not necessarily about being selfish. And we got a couple, and the next one will kind of talk about how you can still work together while you work to win, right? But the chips you win are just like an attraction that you had to pay to see within the bigger event. So if the chips you paid are the research tokens, and the chips you win in that hand, they're like an attraction, right? You've won, and that's great, but don't get so high on it and feel like the game's over. Keep the bigger picture in mind, and don't get so obsessed with that one win that you overpay to see it. Kind of like I was talking about before, where you're like, I have to win this. This has to happen, or I'm sunk, right? Unless you're going all in, which you probably shouldn't be, you're not sunk. You just paid to see that one attraction, and either it happens or it doesn't. A lot of people say detach yourself from the outcome, and I really believe in that. Like, not every outcome is going to be exactly what you want it to be, and not every outcome is going to be ideal and perfect. But if you pay the right amount to be learning along the way and enjoy the attraction for what it is, but still have the bigger picture in mind, then you'll keep yourself in check. Number 14 is let others pay for you to see the big attraction if they're willing, and return the favor. Right? If there's somebody out there that's bullying everybody with their big chip stack because they're the richest person at the table, or they have this power to bluff in a way that is on every single hand, they're betting huge bets. Well, they can't have a perfect hand on every single hand, but they're trying to mess with your psychology so that you don't get to see what they had, right? Well, if somebody else is willing to see that for you, if they're willing to say, I don't, like for me, like if I paid those 5 chips, my research tokens, to figure out what that person was putting down so that I could win the next one, right? if somebody's willing to pay so that I can have that information, then I'll fold, right? But I should be willing to do that for other people too, right? If they're willing to, somebody wants to take care of you, let them. But try to return the favor. Be the one that gives more than you're taking, right? Because if you're just folding on everything, then all you're doing is benefiting the bully and giving them an unfair advantage, and nobody's really gonna benefit but that person that somehow got to that point, right? And then the gap does start to happen, and they're gonna win, and you're not even gonna have a chance anymore. Number 15, pay attention when you fold. Don't check out. It's like having access to free research and hints. So just like if you're willing to let somebody else be the one that keeps betting, sometimes when you fold in poker, you might be like, all right, I'm out of this hand. I'm going to go get some snacks, or I'm just going to sit here and tell jokes or whatever. And that's great. But you should keep one eye on having a good time and the other eye on what's actually happening around the table, because you didn't have to pay for that hand, especially if you didn't bet at the beginning, but you still get to see what's happening. And in life, that's like, if somebody's willing to bring you along to something, don't just go and hope it's fun. Go and learn something from it. Go enjoy it. Or if you're not in something 100%, whether it's on a team at work or with your family or whatever it is, if you're not going, maybe you should still try to pay attention to what went down and how things went. Because now you're better in the loop, right? And you're more connected, and you're in a better position to build things up. So don't take your eye off the ball, in other words. Number 16 is distractions are fun, but they can be a wolf in sheep's clothing. I was at this crazy poker thing with like some Freemasons or something. I don't know what it was, but it was at this old like gentleman's club bar type thing. And like an elk lodge type of deal. And I know I was doing really well on the first round, but then there was this moment where, I had really brought it. I followed all my principles. I stuck it, and I could tell like the guys around the table that are there every time are like, who's this newcomer? How's he getting us? And then they go and they say, okay, we're going to take a break. You guys can eat some stuff, and everybody's going to go participate in these raffles or whatever. Right. And so I'm thinking, well, this is kind of a cool experience, and I'm just trying to drink it in and do all that stuff. And everybody's just kind of doing whatever. And then it kind of got me into a different state of mind. I forgot. I was more focused on just having fun, which is, I don't think that's a loss either, but I was more focused on having fun than actually sticking to my plan in poker. And then people around the table would do something, right? They'd joke around, they'd say something, and I would think in my mind, oh, they're not even paying attention. They don't have a good hand. Or they'd ask me a question about myself, where I'm from, and some of the time it would throw me off my pattern and keep into my principles so much, and I would just hurry up and do whatever, right? I wouldn't think about what I was doing, and I would lose that hand. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll get back on here in a second. But then the distractions just keep coming, and I realized that some of them were not, some of them were fun, but some of them were and just innocent, but some of them seemed to be intentional. Like, we need you to not be paying attention so that we can keep winning, right? And you think about the way that marketing and your phone and social media, and now with the rapidly advancing technology and corruption in kind of the way that people win and make money and all that kind of stuff, a lot of it's based on keeping you distracted from your principles, from the things that matter to you. They want you to pay attention somewhere else like a magician so that you don't see what's actually happening and figure it out. So keep that in mind. Number 17, sometimes when you want to back down, you should double down. And that's kind of goes back to that bully with all the chips, right? There's going to be times where you're like, fear starts to take over in your life, where you're like, oh, okay, I should fold here. There's no way I can win this. And all the voices around you are saying, yeah, dude, that's like, why are you still playing? Like, you don't really have anything, do you? Or you bet dumb on the last one. You should have never kept playing. Right. And that's what it's like, whether it's your business or any dream or anything that you care about. It might not always seem like a very rational thing to do. But sometimes, especially if it's all fear driven and you haven't really thought about it, and fear is the number one emotion that's driving you, and you're an uncertainty is what's driving you to want to back down. Sometimes you should double down. And number 18 is double down is a better option than all in sometimes. Because you don't need to throw the big Hail Mary. You don't need to do something ridiculous. Right? But you do need to say, you know what? I'm not going to shrink from this. I'm going to bring it. I'm going to see what's possible. Even when normally I wouldn't. Or even when others wouldn't. I'm doubling down because I know that this is going to work out. But you don't need to go all in. You don't need to be stupid. Right? Number 19. Don't double down because you want to get back what you lost. I think I already talked about that, but often you'll be playing poker and you'll think, oh man, I just lost so many chips. I need to like break from my normal strategy here so that because I've lost so much. And now I need to be a little bit reckless, but it'll be worth it because I'm going to get back everything that I lost. And if that's what's making you want to double down, not because you believe in the thing that you have and that it's all just noise that's trying to keep you from doing the thing that you're supposed to do. But if you're doing it because you're like, I got to get back what I lost, then you haven't let go of the fact that that money is gone. And that effort, all that stuff is just a sunk cost. You shouldn't be doubling down on things that you've already lost. You shouldn't be doing it that way. It doesn't help in poker and it doesn't help in life. Double down because you know you can do it. It's you know and you believe that there's a good potential outcome here. Number 20 is don't ever assume you know how to read the other players with anything more than a 40% degree of confidence. This one has messed me up a lot. As soon as it goes back to the pride and ego being exploited, as soon as you think you understand what's happening with somebody, even if you know them really well, if you get too confident and start taking shortcuts and think, oh, I know what he's going to do here, people are actually unpredictable and they change a lot. And I've noticed this a lot in my marriage too, where it's like, I think I know what my wife's thinking, but I wasn't even close. And I was trying to base it off of patterns and different things. And it wasn't until I said, maybe I don't understand what's going on at all here. Maybe she's trying not to make an attack on me at all. Or maybe this person didn't have any ill will toward me. Or maybe this person wasn't angry at my work. Or maybe they weren't bluffing, right? Like they had done before. Maybe this was a sincere thing. So I need to question my degree of confidence on what people are actually doing. And stop thinking that I can just read them and take that shortcut. It requires an extra layer of communication and attention and vigilance in poker, right? It's kind of spot checking what's actually happening and if things have changed at this stage. Number 21, don't let regret from losing the last hand take you off your game for this hand. That's kind of like the don't double down because of what you lost to get back what you lost. But in this case, it's, let's say I just did double down, right? And I thought I was going to win, and I was playing the odds a little bit, and I just suffered a big disappointment because some fluke happened. The reckless guy somehow won, even though everything pointed to me winning, right? And it's like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. And I was sticking to my hand, my plan on that hand, but it just didn't work out. And then I start to question, oh, maybe my plan is stupid. I got to do something crazy to disrupt this. I got to, or maybe I start to think, my plan doesn't work at all. It's all been wrong all along. And I start doing the all or nothing thing, right? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you have a big fallout in a relationship. Maybe you hear some unkind words from your boss. Somebody discourages you, brings you down, puts you down, tells you you don't belong, tells you you're not as good as you think you are. And you start to believe that. You start to think, I can't do this. My system's been wrong all along. I can't stay consistent. I was trying to be consistent. I can't lose weight. I've tried every diet. I might as well not try anymore because I had a cheat meal when I wasn't supposed to have a cheat meal. So instead of doing the next right thing that you can do on this new day that you have, you're off your game. Not only did you lose the last hand, but you're letting the last hand lose this hand for you. And it doesn't have to be that way. So don't let the regret from losing take you off your game for what's right in front of you. Number 22, do not seek revenge or payback. It's a tough one because every single movie, action movie, or almost any movie you watch in popular culture, most stories are really satisfying if they have all this, like, oh, this person was poorly treated. But we all have a thirst for justice, right? We all want to see things be made right. And the real way to make things right is through forgiveness and through people changing. But in popular culture and stories and action and all that stuff, the way to make things right is through revenge. And we're all part of a human family. Like we don't have to have that be our guiding principle. Even if it does feel like your enemy, especially in poker, if you try to get revenge or pay somebody back, they're going to see that you're doing that, and they're going to use it against you. And then nothing good happens for you. Maybe you do get revenge one time, but then they know kind of that that's how you operate. And they can try to pull that out of you, whether they're doing it subconsciously or not. And it happens in business and life constantly too. If somebody's a hothead, or you feel like they've got a vendetta or whatever, they think that they're going to be satisfied by getting someone back. And I've done this too, where I just was like, I'm going to show everybody that they're wrong about me. I'm going to be extra successful. I'm going to rub it in somebody's face in a basketball game or football or whatever it is. And Never felt good, never gave me the satisfaction that I had hoped. I mean, maybe momentarily, but in the bigger picture, it was like did more damage to me than it did to the person that I was getting revenge or paying back. And there's people out there that will latch right onto that anger and that attitude. Number 23, you don't have to ante on every single hand. And what I said, ante is the minimum amount that you have to pay when you're dealt cards, right? Sometimes being opportunistic can or saying yes to everything can actually be what causes us to lose a really slow battle. In poker, if you just ante on every hand, I mean, I usually do, but I'll sit out some of them when the hand's really, really bad, or when I gotta go to the bathroom or something, right? I'm sitting this one out. I'm not gonna sit there and just do it for the sake of doing it because I can't possibly. This is kind of like the FOMO thing where the fear of missing out is actually what's causing you to miss out, and it's eating you alive a little bit. If you feel like you have to say yes to everybody, if you feel like you have to go to every single thing that you're invited to, or step up anytime somebody demands something of you, no matter what, even if the cost seems small, over time it's a large cost. So just know that you have an option. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to play on every hand. You don't have to ante. You can take the time you need. You can sit out if it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. It's okay. Just get back in when it makes sense. Number 24, what you think is a crappy hand can be the winner. I like this one a lot. I mentioned it earlier with my recklessness of, betting the farm, even when I had a really low hand and still winning and everybody just kind of flipping out, right? You might think you have a crappy hand in life, and you might think that you're at a great disadvantage, and maybe you are, right? Probably statistically speaking, and based on the ways the game is played, maybe you do have a crappy hand. But that does not mean that there's not something you can do with it. You always have an option. And a lot of people that have been dealt extremely crappy hands, worse hands than yours. Yes, yours. Anybody who thinks that they've been dealt the crappiest hand, there's somebody out there that's been dealt a very similar hand that became the winner. And there's others who only became the loser because they chose that. And there's others who just had a hard time, right? But it's kind of like a scale in between everything. And we have more choice than we think we do in almost every circumstance. Choice of our attitude, choice of trying to find a new possibility, a new way around things, a better way of doing it, a better way of perfecting ourselves, a better way of improving and looking inward. You can still be the winner. And number 25, throwback to Big Rig and Yogi Berra. It ain't over till it's over. There's this, and I haven't gone and researched it myself, but my poker buddies told me that there was this incredible story where this guy was playing the World Series of Poker and he went all in on something and he lost. It was like like he was doing really good and he went all in to try to push people out or just to try to survive. He threw his Hail Mary and he lost. And so he stood up to get up and walk away from the table, this tournament, World Series of Poker, like the highest level there is. And a chip had been sitting in his hoodie or whatever he was wearing, and it fell out on the table. He had one chip left, even though everybody else around the table had so many other chips. He was at an extreme disadvantage from a psychological standpoint. He was effectively broke, but still in the game. And he went on to win the entire thing. So even when you think it's over, it ain't over till it's over. And like Big Rig adds on to that. And then even then it's not over. And number 26 is don't bet on your hand, bet on yourself. Whatever you've been dealt, whatever you have, whatever your circumstances are, don't get overconfident because you have all these great things, because that will make you weak. You won't be vigilant. You'll be the other players that got beat by the guy with one chip. If you feel like you don't have anything, your hand is terrible, and it's always going to lose, then you're betting on the hand. You're not betting on yourself. You can improve yourself, and the hand just becomes a moment in time. It's a detail, because there's going to be another hand that's dealt as you improve yourself and bet on yourself. Go get them. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope it had impact and meaning, but I really would like it if you work more on becoming that bonfire in your life for yourself and for other people, and start really going after that growth and that change that you've been waiting for. I promise I can help you get started on that at changewithnate.com, or you can go to the business website and we'll teach you how to grow in ways that really compound. That's at wayfirelabs.com. Either way, I hope to hear from you soon. Get on the calendar and we'll see you on the next one.